Now, the very first thing you need to do when you set up the saxophone is to take a reed out. So the reed is really fragile and we need to be really careful with it because we don't want to put a chip in it. So the best place is in our mouth because it needs to be wet anyway. So while we set up, that will be in our mouth. But so I can talk, I'll leave mine out. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is take out our gooseneck, which looks like this, and our mouthpiece, this one. Okay, so you've taken out your gooseneck. The first thing you need to do is take out your cork grease, which you should have in your case. This is for this part, which is made of cork, and it just keeps it nice so that the mouthpiece will go on nice and easily. And you can also just put a tiny little bit on that end there. Then you can pop that away and just rub that in with your finger like that. It should be nice and slippery. Okay, next thing is take out your mouthpiece, and that should slide on nicely like that. The next thing is the reed, which has been in your mouth, so it should be nice and wet now. And you need to line this up on your mouthpiece so that the top of the reed is on the top of the mouthpiece. But make sure you only touch it by this bit because it's so fragile, so we don't want to break it. So now that we have our reed in the correct position on our mouthpiece, we're going to put our ligature on. So with your ligature, you need to put this on the top really carefully so it doesn't touch the reed at all. You'll probably be putting yours on so that the screws are facing the right and they're on the front, just like that. And you can tighten that screw, but it doesn't have to be too tight. And we're ready. Okay, so with the reeds, this reed that I'm using is a Van Doren reed, but most of my students use Rico reeds, and it's best to start off on size 1.5. So if you go into a music shop and ask for a 1.5 reed, they'll know what you're talking about. And because they are so fragile, it's probably worth getting a few. They usually are cheaper if you buy them by the box. They're a 10 in a box. So I would suggest that you buy a box to start with and see how you go. And you'll definitely get through all of those. So each reed tends, you could probably play on it for 5 or 6 weeks at this stage, but often they get broken before that happens. So that's why we need to be so careful when we're putting our reeds on our mouthpiece. And the other thing is when we're putting the reeds back in the case, we also have to be really careful. So for example, these reed cases, we need to just really slowly put this reed back in here and not push it too far in, otherwise it'll get stuck. But we don't want to just ram it in like that because our reed will probably break, and we're trying to make these last as long as we can. Alto saxophone reeds are usually about $3 each, maybe about between $3 and $4 usually each, which is why we're trying to get them to last as long as we can. People think that I harp on about them, about making sure that they're really careful with their reeds and with putting them back in their cases, but because they're so expensive and they're just so fragile, I think it's really worth it, especially when mum and dad are paying for them.